Hey everyone, my name is Vince,
And this is John.
and we are JV Finance. John, today I'm going to tell you a little story about this newlywed couple that I found out online.
Oh, cool.
So there was this newlywed couple. In fact, there was a problem. They want to get married, and you know what? On a wedding day, everything should be happy, right? You shouldn't be worried about
Sure.
everything. You should be worried about the guests, like the food, everything's flowing. But there was this cloud looming over their head. There was this looming threat that this couple didn't actually foresee,
A
and that
real
was
cloud
debt.
or ah,
Not
sorry,
an actual cloud. It
it
wasn't a
rained out
hurricane
there. That
going on.
sucks.
Yeah, but I mean, hell, I guess none of them must have wished that it was raining. But no,
Hmm.
actually, they had debt. They brought in debt that they did not disclose to each other.
How much?
See, it's a funny thing that you should ask. Well, if you're in grad school, John, let me ask: if you're a grad school
Hmm.
graduate, how much debt do you think you would have?
Well, ideally, obviously, you want as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got people, some friends that probably roughly around 10K at the max. I would
10K the
say,
max? Yeah.
but
See,
I've had less than that, I suppose.
he had 100K in debt. 100K.
What?
And his fiance, now his wife, she just graduated from grad school and she had $85,000 in debt. Now together, when they
What
get
are
married,
you doing?
I know. Like, and when you get married, you have to take on the other person's debt with you. So
Mhm.
combined, they had a total of $185,000 in debt. Now, that's ridiculous.
Imagine not being able to purchase a home because
Hmm.
the money that could be used to purchase that house is
Hmm. Pretty much
the
sunken.
the,
It's
the sum of your loan. That's insane. I mean,
mhm.
you can buy a home in Naperville at $185,000. You know,
Literally. And you know what? To make
without the
matters even
mortgage, of
worse,
course.
yeah, and to make matters even worse, they took a loan just for their wedding. They took an additional loan for $35,000 in wedding costs. So now that brings it up to like around a little over 200K, 210, I believe. And John,
Oh
like you
my
said, you can buy
goodness.
a house with that amount of money borrowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
It's
really
not
puts a
including the
damper on
interest they're
them.
going to have to pay because, of course, they
Hmm.
cannot pay all that all at once. I
No,
am assuming not, unless his dad is secretly, a millionaire. But
I bet they wish that was the case.
mhm,
But no, they actually didn't tell each other about this debt until before, like you said, they actually tried to get a house together. In fact,
sure.
the underwriter actually went into the file and went to their cases, did a hard credit check on them, and he found out that they already had a little over 200K in debt. And because they didn't have a plan to pay that off, they got denied their first house as a
He just
newlywed
went,
couple.
not happening.
Wrong.
That's tough, man.
Exactly.
That's tough.
It was rough.
I mean,
Like,
what are you thinking
mhm,
though? Like seriously,
mhm,
like for a second. I mean, I understand that you do have to pull out loans for
mhm,
college. I
mhm.
mean, a lot of people do. It's a pretty common thing. But
It's something that you have to.
when you start rising to 40K higher stuff like that, uh, especially getting into a relationship with somebody who also has loans. I know we don't pick our partners based on how much debt they have, but also at the same time, you got to be mindful that whoever you do get in a relationship with, they're also going to take on your debt personally.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
just feel like they definitely were working together. But
No,
God,
absolutely
good
not.
gosh,
Like
man.
what marriage? I've heard somewhere that marriages, like a good majority of marriages, and for two reasons. One is
Hmm.
infidelity, and two is money. And the fact that they
Ah,
didn't even tell each other about this astounds me. Astounds me. 200K in debt, and you just started getting married. So, and John, that brings us to today's episode. And today's episode is
ooh,
all about budgeting. And
really?
with
Okay.
yeah, errors like this could definitely be avoided. Yeah.
No, I 100% agree.
What is budgeting? It's a
W-
plan. It's a plan
Yeah,
for the future.
agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, it's just like you want to figure out what you want to do in life.
Hmm.
Say, for example, like in their situation, they want to buy a house, right?
Sure.
Well, they want to plan out how to actually allocate their funds and
Right.
actually save up money to buy a house some
Hmm.
10 ish years in the future. So it's important. It's important to budget because if you want to have goals in life, if you have aspirations, like John, say for example, you want to retire one day, or no? Let me ask: do you want to keep working for the rest of your life?
Well, I'm probably gonna die of a drug overdose. I'm kidding. No, yeah, I'm sure I do want to retire someday. But
Hmm.
as long as I mean, as long as I still like my work, I'm still going to do my work. But eventually,
Yeah.
I will retire. Hopefully, at the age of 65, which is of
Hmm.
course the average retirement.
Hmm.
Hopefully, not sooner than that. I don't want to,
Hmm.
hurt my retirement funds or something by pulling it early. But yeah, I do want to
Hmm.
retire one day. That's a good point.
I don't know, man. For me, I want to retire when I'm 45. And by retire,
45.
I mean, yeah, I mean, by retire, I mean that I want to be able to do whatever I want without having to work for somebody else.
Hmm.
You know,
That's a good
like
idea.
I don't mind just like budgeting my way so that way I could be smart with how I spend my money in the future.
So
Like,
what
I
you're
don't know.
saying is
Hmm.
you would like the option to be able to retire at 45. But let's say you really really
Hmm.
enjoyed your job and you still want to do it at
Yeah.
least till when you're 65. You just want
Hmm.
the option to be able to be like, okay, screw this. I don't want to do
Hmm.
this anymore. No, I 100%
Exactly.
agree. I'm
Exactly.
for that.
Oh, here's a funny story.
Hmm.
So when I was a finance tutor during my MBA time, there
Yeah,
was this guy, and he was talking about this old guy in the back of the trading office. It was in the Chicago Stock Exchange or Chicago Trading Board,
sure.
whatever. But he said this old guy, 85 years old, he would just go in the back, tell people how to do their trades, and then just go about their day. The
Hmm.
guy, he makes around $2 million a year, and he has a entire portfolio that's worth over $50 million.
Of course.
The reason, and like you said, the reason why he comes into work is not because, oh, he has to worry about money. It's because he loves what he does and he budget properly, that he has an automated system in place so that way he doesn't have to worry about money ever again in the
Imagine
future.
being in a situation where you could literally
Hmm.
not take a paycheck and
Yeah.
the for the entire year, but
Hmm.
still gets a lot because that's what a lot of people do, right? Is you
Hmm.
see situations where people are retiring like in their 30s, right? They're
Hmm.
retiring because they don't need to work anymore. But of
Hmm.
course, they're still going to work, but they're going to work hobby jobs, is what is classified as jobs that are
Hmm.
basically that they're doing for fun. They don't need that money because they've already racked up enough money in
Hmm.
retirement, in Roth IRAs, stuff that we can obviously we're going to talk about later, but
Hmm.
they're in a perfect financial situation and they have money in the background to
Hmm.
in case there's emergency, in case there's situations. And again, we'll talk about that more later. So,
Exactly. And like all these successful people, they all got to that point
right. Oh,
because of budgeting, because they budgeted their funds properly in the
hmm,
best way possible. Now,
nice.
another reason why instead of like trying to get out of the rat race, try to getting financial freedom
Yeah.
or budgeting is like look today. Look today, for example, with COVID-19, a lot of
Mm.
people lost their jobs. Like
It's already on to COVID
it's
20 now. Jeez.
literally, I mean, at
Yeah.
this rate, but
This year's been brutal.
it has been rough. It's been a shitty year, and I don't know. A lot of good people lost their jobs, and a lot of
Right.
people had to dip into their savings. But on the downside, not a lot of people had enough savings. A good majority of
Hmm.
people actually like live day to day. They don't
Right.
actually plan for the future. They don't. Nobody plans to undergo COVID-19. Nobody plans to have a pandemic where they might lose their jobs, might not have a source of income. And the people who are able to actually get out of this in one piece, if not for the better, but okay, are people that actually planned out for situations like this. They
Yeah.
had 3 to 6 months of their monthly obligations saved up in their
Right.
bank account so that they're okay in case something like this ever happens.
Honestly, personally, like, so I was in the market for to buying a home in
Hmm.
these last couple of months here, just because of obviously the situation. But now that I'm making a decent salary,
Hmm.
I I can definitely purchase a house. But I think my plan going forward
Hmm.
is because you also have to feel out the market. You never know what the market's going to do in a month from now, even a day from now, right?
Hmm.
It fluctuates all the time,
Hmm.
and I think my goal is going to be that come springtime in a couple
Hmm.
months next year, obviously,
Hmm.
springtime of next year, there's going to be a lot more openings because of situations where you've got people who are foreclosed on their home
Mhm.
because they just can't pay the mortgage because they lost their job during COVID. Again,
Mhm.
you're not taking advantage of anybody here. That's not what I'm
Mhm.
saying. Is that house is already foreclosed, which means the bank has already got that house back. They've already
Yeah.
purchased that house back from that person. So all
Mhm.
you're doing is basically then paying the bank to for that foreclosure. Now you might have to do repairs and stuff like that, but in the long run, it
Mhm.
might be more beneficial. Let's say you're trying to buy a home right now, or you're looking towards feel out the market, and that
Mhm.
can be applied to everything, right? Buying stock,
Yeah.
anything. Feel out the market, figure out what's happening.
Figure out
Um,
what works best for you.
yeah, exactly.
Because John, how old are you right now? You're
I
24,
am
right?
24 years old. Yes,
And
sir.
you
You're
just
25, right?
I'm 25 right now. But
Nice.
to be honest, you just graduated from college,
Yeah,
what,
2
a
years ago.
year about a 2 year a year
2018, December.
2018, 2 years ago. And the
Sure.
fact that you had this mentality that you already know what you want to do
Mhm.
and you're already making a plan for that, that says a lot about you and it says a lot about where you will end up in the future.
Well,
Because
that
if you
just
didn't
warms
make
my heart, doesn't it?
Oh, appreciate it. But the fact that you're able to actually plan it out means that you're actually able to succeed. And you're able
Mhm.
to, like you said, you're able to adjust for these economic climates that we're in right now. Like you said,
Sure.
you're waiting for people like, I mean, any opportunity is a good opportunity, but you're waiting for people to get foreclosed on their houses. So that way you could buy properties at a lower market value. And that way you can do some rehabilitation, rehab, and effectively
Mhm.
what you did is you bought a house at below market cost. And
Right.
now if you refinance that property, you literally made money right there.
Right. And
Hmm.
that's a good segue back to obviously the topic of budgeting. I would
Yes.
not have the savings that I have without
Hmm.
budgeting properly. That understanding of like the money that you have now, you can turn that into
Hmm.
thousands of dollars, that the small paycheck that you have now
Hmm.
because you have time, because time is on your side,
Hmm.
like you've got literally your life ahead of you. That's not just a
Yeah.
joke. That's really going to multiply, not add, it will multiply the finances in your future. So
Hmm.
that $5 that you save today, what's that going to turn into in the future? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Now, John, let me ask you. Say,
Sure.
for example, I am a broke college student. I work
Sure.
as a bartender, right?
Right.
Or no, not as a bartender. I work as a server. I make below minimum. I make minimum wage,
I
right?
love how politically correct that was. As a server, it's not a waiter or waitress. I love that. Good job.
Thanks, man. But as a server, I don't make much money. All that money
Sure.
I have goes towards, I don't know, student, like paying off my student loans, paying
Hmm.
off for my rent, for
Right.
electricity. I don't have much money to save, to budget anything. I don't have much money to actually invest in the future. At that point, you have insurance. You have to take care of school. You have to take care of
Hmm.
food, groceries, electricity, utilities, and all that stuff. And to be honest, maybe you're left with $100 left over for spending money.
Right.
Realistically, maybe even less. Well, as we said before, those $50 could play. Yeah, right now they might not seem like a big, huge thing. Yeah, you can spend that money on beer money, or you could choose to reinvest in yourself. You could buy, you could
Right.
educate yourself on how to actually start a business. Or, like John, you mentioned, you could invest it in the stock market through M1
Yep.
Finance or Robinhood, and you can have that money compound every so often. Now, say for example, if you invest of that 1360 you get a month, you have 50
Hmm.
bucks, right? And you invest
Yeah.
that into the stock market with an average return of 7% a year.
Yeah.
Well, that you would more or less you would get an extra $3.50 just by
Sure.
leaving your money into the market. Yeah, that might not seem like a lot, but you got to realize you're going to keep adding 50 bucks every month into the market. So that 350
Yeah.
will grow into like roughly 20 bucks extra per year.
And obviously, the more like kind of focus and the more time you put into certain stuff like that, like they'll say, for give an example, like stock market, the minimum you'll get is a 7% return. But I've been in the stock market for just a little over a year, and I have a 30% return. I'm not looking into specifically anything really besides the fact that I have a certain I have a portfolio, right, of certain
Hmm.
stocks that I believe that have been doing well for the past 5 years, that will continue
Hmm.
to do well in the next 5 years,
Hmm.
and that's really all that is to it. Now, you have to understand, and Vince, you would agree, the money that you put into the stock market, that's going to be for later, because the
Hmm.
longer you keep that in there, the more money you're going to get at the end of the month. Or if you just threw in, like $10, what, that's 10% of your spending money of $100. You would be surprised what $10 could get you in the stock market in the long haul.
Hmm. And if even so, say for example, if you're in college, you're not worried about retirement right now, which is
Right.
understandable. What you could do is, say for example, you want to go on vacation,
Hmm.
right? And you could plan out a vacation in 5 years from now, or like a year from now. If you put that money in the market, you would have an extra. Say for example, you put $100 in January, and you have a 7% return. Well, you have an extra $7 for you to spend on vacation,
Your
or even
money's not
more.
doing anything when it's sitting there in a bank. It's not.
No.
It's you. Your money has to work for you.
Mhm.
You've heard that. Like, people have heard that saying before. But there's so many options out there. Your money
Mhm.
should be working for you. Like, if
Mhm.
you really don't like the risk of like a
Mhm.
stock market, there's
Mhm.
CDs out there.
Mhm.
You can get CDs where you basically you take a certain amount of money and you throw
Yeah.
that into a
Mhm.
CD for 6 months, let's
Mhm.
say, and you'll get like a, I don't know, like a 0.6% return,
Mhm.
which is, I mean, depending on how much money you put in there, is won't be amazing, but hey, it's better than nothing, right?
Mhm.
So
And yeah, that goes back to like what budgeting is. Like we are giving you guys a whole lot of examples of what you could do with the extra money that you have in hand.
right.
But that all goes back down to budgeting. How much can you afford to allocate to these different options that we provided for you?
Hmm.
Now, you might ask yourself, how can you budget? How can you
Sure.
budget today? Not today. You can do it numerous ways. Well, if you want to do it by yourself, the first thing you got to do is one, you got to figure out your income, your net income, the amount of
Hmm.
money that actually take home into your bank account every single month.
Hmm.
So going back to the example, say for example, if you earn $1,000, $1,000 a month, right? Net of everything. Now the next step from there is to figure out your monthly obligations. What do you have to pay? Netflix, for example, food, rent, utilities. Well, then we'll say, for example, that's going to be $700, right? So
Hmm.
1,000 minus 700, you will get an extra $300. It's $300 of spending money you have left over. Now this is where the magic happens. This is where this is first two steps of budgeting. Now you have the fun stuff, the spending money, $300. If, say, for example, you aim to go on vacation, you can allocate that into one of the many options that John and I were talking about for the past 10 minutes. Or if you want, you can put it into a bank account and keep it safe. But the thing is, it's up to you. You have a plan. You know where you want to go with that money. You have options. You can do whatever you want to do. Now, John, say for example, I don't want to do all this work by hand. I don't want to actually go be tedious with all this. Are there third party apps out there that can help me out with this?
Yeah, so there's several different third-party apps that you can use.
Mhm.
So there's a couple that I would recommend is Mint.com. That's a pretty good
Mhm.
one.
Wait, hold on. Doesn't what's his face? Crap. Daredevil. Ryan Reynolds.
Daredevil.
He's like the spokesman of that, right?
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Dang,
Um,
dang. Man does everything. There's personal capital. Personal capital that they will definitely help you out. Any major bank accounts would offer these budgeting uh, programs for your benefits. I
sure.
know PNC. PNC has a monthly pie chart breakdown to determine where you spend a lot of your money on.
Right.
So, say for example, you spend like $50 or like a lot more money than you should on Uber Eats or DoorDash. Well, they'll let you know that they'll tell you that you're spending. Hey, Vince, you're spending too much money on DoorDash. Why don't you bring it down and allocate those funds somewhere else? Well,
Right.
because of that, I know where I'm spending it, and I can actually make a change going forward. Our aim is to rectify this lack of information that you guys have. And through
Sure.
our conversations as Because to be honest, we have credibility because we're both financial analysts.
Hmm.
And our goal is to actually teach you guys this stuff, why it's so important to, for example, today, why is it important to budget? What the worst case scenario could be, and what the best case scenario could be. Like,
And
like you said,
obviously,
John.
like
Mhm.
the first, not to cut you off, but the
Mhm.
first episode, this is a very general idea of finance. We'll obviously, like we talked about before, we're going to get more in depth in specific instances where finance is become you're going to become a crucial role within those areas. So we'll talk about the stock market, we'll talk about credit score, we'll talk about mortgages. The list goes on, and they all kind of compound onto each other. Like just a brief example: credit score is going to drastically affect the mortgage that you're able to acquire, right? So those things, like, again, this is more general. This is kind of going over the bigger topics. So obviously stay tuned for later episodes, and we'll dive in more about how to get yourself on the right track as far as your finances. Wouldn't you say,
Exactly.
Vince?
Oh, I'd agree 100%.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. And my name is Vince,
My name's John.
and we're JV Finance. And thank you guys for listening to us.
Peace.